I still hear the echo of my heels in that empty house like the place was holding its breath. The Hale mansion usually hums with staff and soft music, but that night it was dark still, the kind of quiet that makes you whisper without knowing why. I followed a thin line of light to the primary suite, pushed the frosted bathroom door with my palm, and there he was. My boss, Pius, the man who runs rooms with a look, sitting on the tile suit on shoulders, shaking a picture frame pressed to his chest. He didn't see me at first, then he did, and the mask snapped back into place. Drop the file and go. That was the order. 3 years as his assistant had trained me to disappear, take the hit, make it look easy. But something in me said no. Not like this. I don't know if it was the way his hand shook when he wiped his face or the way his jaw locked like he was trying to hold grief between his teeth. I stood my ground, not above him, not towering, just there. He laughed once, not joy, more like a blade catching light, and said, "You think you know me, Joanne. None of you know what happened." "Then tell me," I said, and I kept my voice low, because sometimes loud makes people run. It was their anniversary, he started, and already his voice changed the way a road changes when it hits gravel. Tessa was late in her pregnancy, candles, ready salmon, ready the playlist she made, because she knew he liked track 4 most. He promised 9, then 10, then there was a storm, a blackout, a window that wouldn't close. She carried a candle upstairs, slipped at the top step, curled in like she could still protect the baby on the way down. He found her at the bottom, tried to carry her out himself because the ambulance was delayed, remembered the smell of rain and cologne and hot asphalt, and how the ER lights were too bright for a night that should have been soft. They couldn't save her. They couldn't save him. He looked at me like the sentence had been living in his bones. I killed them. No, I said, not because I'm naive, but because truth matters. You were late and you've been punishing yourself ever since, but you didn't push her. Negligence is a nice word for what I am, he said, and the way he said negligence sounded like a life sentence. If she were here, would she want you on this floor? Or would she want you standing, breathing, remembering her without burying yourself? I asked, my hand resting on his sleeve so light he could shake me off. He didn't. That's how Act 1 ends in real life. No music swell, just a man not telling you to leave anymore. Morning came and the mask was back. Navy suit sharp enough to cut air tie, perfect voice, precise. He didn't meet my eyes when I handed the agenda. Our fingers brushed, he flinched like paper had heat. Anyone else would say, same old Pius. But I saw the red at the rims of his eyes, the way his shoulders held tension like a habit he couldn't break. By noon, the office did what offices do. Whispered. You know what I mean, right? Break rooms become courts with no evidence rules. I kept my head down because the truth is, folks have looked through me most of my life. I grew up where the highway runs flat, and Merciless worked 2 jobs. Through school, moved to the city with a suitcase and a rent payment that made my stomach pitch. People told me to smile more, to be grateful, to stay in my lane. I stayed in my lane until I built a bigger one. That night, he called me into the conference room while after the building had emptied, the skyline flickering like 1,000 tired eyes. You didn't tell anyone, did you? He asked, still looking out the window. I would never, I said, because pain isn't content. Talking won't bring her back, he said. No, I said, but it can bring you back. Then the stories came. The jacket she wore, because it smelled like him, the one creaky stair he tried to skip when he carried her to bed, the lie he told himself that tomorrow he'd be home earlier. Tomorrow never came. You're punishing yourself for being human, I said, and I watched the word punishing hang in the air like a picture you don't want to straighten. Guilt feels like love because it keeps you close to the moment you lost, but it's a prison, not a tribute. He didn't fire me for saying it. He said, "Come with me tomorrow." I didn't know it meant a door near the back staircase, a small room that smelled like paper and lavender, a nursery frozen in time. A pale blue blanket draped over a crib rail, a half-open box of board books under it, tiny paper cranes hanging from fishing line. 1,000, if you count them all. She was folding them from recipe cards, because hope is a stubborn thing. "I haven't touched anything," he said, tracing the wood, like it could cut. Sometimes I sit here and imagine his laugh. My hand found his before I could overthink it. "Holding on to guilt doesn't bring them back," I said, "it only buries you with them." His grip was too tight, the kind of tight that says, "Please don't go," without asking it out loud. Then came the 3 a.m. call. I saw her falling again, and I walked him through breathing 4 in, 4 hold, 6 out. Keep going until your body believes you. The shifts after that were small but real. He started saying thank you. He asked for opinions and listened. He laughed once in an elevator at a joke our IT guy mumbled. "Yeah, that happened." People looked around like someone had cracked a window. Not everyone liked it. Every office has a hall monitor who appoints himself sheriff. Ours was Conrad from finance, a man who bites and calls it coaching. He cornered me, pitched voice, fake smile. "Stay out of Hale's head. He's your boss, not your project." I reminded him I was doing my job. He slid the word favoritism across the table like a card he thought would win. I told him rumors are what people build when they have no real work to show. Then I went to HR and made a note because receipts are not rude, they're survival. After a brutal board meeting, I was stacking papers when Pius spoke without preamble. "You've changed me." The pen slipped from my fingers. "I don't want to dishonor her," he said. "But when you're around, the weight lifts, and that scares me." "It scares me too," I said, "because I'm not a replacement, and grief can dress up like love when you're drowning. We need time and clarity and boundaries." He nodded. That was the twist for me. Not that he felt something, but that I could say no to the speed of it, and the earth didn't open up beneath me. 2 weeks later, we drove to the cemetery, where the wind sounds like a choir warming up. He didn't talk at first, just touched the cool stone and breathed. Then he apologized. Not the clean kind, the kind that aches. And he said he couldn't live inside armor anymore. He took off his ring, looked at it a long time, placed it gently on the headstone. Not forgetting, just living. He found my hand without looking, and when he stood, he didn't let go. We didn't kiss in a golden hour montage. We walked back to the car with wind in our faces and a kind of quiet that didn't feel like a trap. The wins after that were practical. He spoke to the company and said, "I've been hard to work, for that will change." He took down the pointless time lock between floors because it made assistants feel like thieves. He asked facilities for better chairs because people's backs had been screaming for years. And when payroll discrepancies showed up in Conrad's department, shaved overtime, sloppy approvals, audit did what audit does. I didn't gloat. I didn't have to. Culture is what you count and what you correct. One night after we'd cleared the inbox for the first time in my memory, he said my name like it was a full sentence. "Would you have dinner with me, not here, not for work, just dinner?" I felt my heart do an unhelpful little skip. I said I'd like that, and he nodded like he'd been holding a window open for a while and could finally let go. I know what some of you are thinking. Power timing, grief optics. You can write a thread about it, and maybe you should. I can only tell you what I know. I didn't refuse to leave that bathroom because I wanted to be chosen. I did it because someone was drowning, and I know what it's like to be invisible while people walk by. Victory for me wasn't a dinner invite. It was listening when he said tomorrow never came and watching him make a different kind of promise. It was a building breathing easier because its leader stopped using fear to keep time. It was going home to my own small apartment and realizing the quiet no longer sounded like judgment. We walked the long driveway later that week, the sun slipping under the ocean like a coin. He told me he'd started rehanging the paper cranes, dusting the ones that had drooped, leaving the crib as it was because he didn't need to punish himself there anymore. He offered his arm. I took it. If that feels old-fashioned to you, that's fine. To me, it felt like truce. When he walked me to my car, the jasmine was out, the air cool, and he said thank you. Not for a calendar fix or a flight change, just thank you. I told him you don't have to keep paying forever for one terrible night. He said, I know. We stood there longer than two people need to stand beside a sedan. Then I left because some nights end best exactly where they are. That's the story as clean as I can tell it. A woman folks underestimated a man who thought breaking was the only proof of love, 1,000 small choices that added up to a life that wasn't tapping the brakes anymore. Maybe you think I overstepped. Maybe you think he moved on too soon. Maybe you think compassion at work is a slippery road. Or maybe you've been the person who needed someone to refuse to look away. Tell me what you see here. If second chances matter to you, hit subscribe, share this with someone who needs a breath, and drop a comment. Where is the line between love and guilt, between care and overreach, between moving on and forgetting? I want the truth you've lived.